What do you say to the criticism of Richard Marles' speech in Beijing a couple of years ago, where he said that attempting to engage in the strategic denial of others in the Pacific is not what Australia should be about? He also welcomed the development assistance offered to our Pacific neighbours by Beijing.
Well, if you look at what Richard has done and said, he's been very aware of the competition in the region and the importance of how we respond to it. And the point he is making is that you don't just respond to it by telling people not to go elsewhere. You respond to it by becoming and being and staying the partner of choice. And Julie Bishop understood that. You know, she understood the best way to engage with Pacific leaders, and I visited a number of Pacific Island nations with her on a bipartisan basis. You know, she understood you had to keep demonstrating your engagement with these nations on issues they cared about rather than simply telling them what to do. And the fact is, under this government, that insight and that diplomacy, as well as development assistance, has been lacking.
Mr Marles gave the speech to the embassy to read before he delivered it. Peter Dutton has said that the only Australians who believe it's appropriate to have the Chinese vet the speeches of Australian politicians, he said, I'll read it exactly, the only Australians who think it's okay to have speeches vetted by the Chinese government are Anthony Albanese and Richard Marles. Don't risk our national security with Labor. What's your reaction to that?
Says the man who's delivered so little defence capability, has presided over continued delays in our defence capability and is ensuring that Australians pay around $5.5 billion for submarines which don't exist. Mr Dutton is doing what Mr Morrison does, which is you try and create another fight instead of fronting up. That is what is happening. In relation to the speech, I'd make this point. Richard gave a speech in China in which he criticised the behaviour of the Communist Party in relation to both Hong Kong and Uyghurs. That is the right thing to do.
The latest revelation, if we move our attention to Catherine Deves, the Liberal Party candidate for Warringah, referring to a gay newspaper as the Rainbow Reich. It's among various controversial statements she said online in recent years. She remains the Liberal candidate for Warringah. Do you accept, though, that the broader argument that's being made here and endorsed by the Prime Minister about defending girls and women's sport is something that might resonate around suburban electorates in this country?
Look, what I'd say to people is this is a really sensitive issue. It's sensitive and it's also politically divisive. We've seen how politically divisive it is inside the Liberal Party, with members of the Liberal Party being critical of Ms Deves, very critical of her, and in fact calling for her not to be pre-select or to be disendorsed. So this is a divisive issue. I think this is a sensitive issue. It's an issue that many communities, sporting organisations have been dealing with, and they have the capacity to deal with it. I don't think these are issues that should be dealt with in a politically weaponised environment. I don't think this is an issue on which there should be political games played. I don't agree with Marise Payne on a lot of many issues, and I don't think she's handled the Solomon Islands issue well. But I do think her comments on this, I think it was last week, where she pointed out that these are matters that should be dealt with sensitively. I think that's the right perspective, and I think many Australians would agree, whatever their views on these issues, that it would be better for these sorts of questions to be dealt with within sporting clubs, as they can do. The Sex Discrimination Act enables that, rather than played out in an election campaign in this way.
Do you believe that it could blow back on the coalition campaign in those seats they're defending against the Teal independents?
I think people, regardless of their political persuasion, can recognise when someone is using a sensitive issue to gain political points. And I think that's what's happening.
Anthony Albanese is in isolation for a week. How much of a setback is it to Labor's campaign, just as it looked like he was starting to gain a bit of momentum after what was a win at the Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum last week?
Oh, well, he certainly has. He had gained a lot of momentum, and we really thought that was a very good result in the debate. And thank you for moderating it, Kieran. But it's a pandemic. We planned for this. We thought there was a pretty substantial possibility this would happen, and we have a plan in place to deal with it. And I think Australians understand. This is what happens when you've got COVID in our community. People in many different sectors of our society and community have had COVID and had to take time off. This is no different. There's still a long way to go in this campaign, and we'll be out every day talking about our plans for a better future. Cheaper childcare, cheaper energy, stronger Medicare, and putting the dignity back into aged care.
Well, I guess if he was going to get it, now's not a bad time ahead of the... gives him time to get back for the Labor launch in Perth next week, where you are at the moment. What are the prospects in Perth like for the Labor Party with your launch there on the 1st of May looming? How many seats can you pick up?
Well, ultimately, the Western Australians who are voting will decide that. I would say this, I've been to a number of seats while I've been here. We've had a really strong response, which it's been really pleasing. Nice to get out and about amongst people, Western Australians. I'd make this point. I think Western Australians have worked Mr Morrison out. And I think many people look at him and they think, well, you don't hold a hose. It's not your job. Lots of stuff isn't your job. And do I really want to give you another decade in office, a second decade in office? Do I really want to do that? Now, I think the answer to that is no. But that doesn't mean we don't have to get out and campaign and get out and talk to communities, and that's what we'll be doing.
Shadow Foreign Minister Penny Wong, thanks for joining me from Perth. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good to be with you.